in March. Started the bi-monthly webinar in March. And the reason why I started was because I was looking for a way to share most of the nuggets that we have, most nuggets that we usually have in, so I'm a behavioral therapist. I'm going to talk about that later. And I realized that people have so many misconceptions. So there are misconceptions about what therapy is, misconceptions about what it entails, what healing is. And some people have the most misconceptions are in two directions. They are really very frightened about therapy, or some just don't have an idea. And every idea that they have, they just, put it in. So the bi-monthly webinar is to be able to really explain to people using now real life examples what are the skills that, if you come to meet me in therapy, I'm going to try to teach you and explain to you and do all that. So the first the one we had, we talked about personality, and we brought somebody that was an expert in the field. I didn't want to do it by myself, to just, have somebody speak and all that. The next one, we're talking about resilience. And so we brought somebody that has used the skills, in this field to do what they had to do. And now I'm bringing in Oreoluwa Lesi, drum roll. And Oreoluwa Lesi is somebody that I really have looked through her journey, and I saw that she's somebody that I could ask to talk about the topic I want to talk about today. So today we're talking about clarity. And what is clarity? I know a lot of people say so many things about clarity, and why I chose the topic clarity is because what I've come to see in counseling when people come to meet me is that all I need to do for you is just make you gain clarity. You usually have what you need to do to help yourself, but you've just not been able to harness everything you are. You've not been able to look at yourself. You've not been able to identify what are the opportunities I have and how can I work with that. And I realized that some people just need clarity. That's all they need. And clarity is a very, very vital skill that people need, to get better. And so why did I choose Ore to talk about clarity? Because she started her business. She will talk about her business quite, while we are starting. She started her business in Nigeria doing tech and working with women when nobody was going into tech. And obviously when women were not encouraged to go into tech. Tech then was something that a lot of people just thought, I don't think it's viable. I don't think it's a business, and I think it was too male dominated. So people just didn't want to do that. And Ore started her business then, and it's an NGO, which is also something that a lot of people be like, NGO, you even start tech, you didn't even start, all that. And I've seen her grow the business. I've been in NGO for quite a long time. And what happens in NGO is that a lot of people diversify so they start out with what they intend to start out with, but along the way, they just diversify and don't continue to do what they had to do. But I have watched already in her business, and this is what she said she was going to do from beginning, and she has maintained that particular thing till now. So I want to be curious. So that's the best person to talk about clarity. That means she's clear about what she wants to do. And with the changing economy and changing everything, she still went ahead, to do that. So I really want to know who Ore is and why, she's doing what she's doing. So let me just talk a bit about Ore using her biography. Oreoluwa is the founder and executive director of Women Technology Empowerment Center, a Nigerian non-for-profit organization committed to building more inclusive technology ecosystem with the next generation of women, technology creators, entrepreneurs, and leaders. So since 2008, WTech has encouraged over 47,000 girls and women across Nigeria to pursue STEM. And so STEM is science, technology, engineering, and maths. Am I right, Ore? Yes.
Yes.
Careers, and supported women to use technology confidently to increase their economic power and ability to speak about issues affecting their lives. Oreoluwa has been showcased in the media, including BBC Africa, Time magazines, channels, TV, NT, and Ebony Live. She's also the director of Pataba, a family-owned bookshop in Lagos. And that's something I used to tell her, this is quite amazing. Having a bookshop when everybody is going digital, that's to show that there's a consistency about what she does. And then she's the host of Other Women. It's an interview style based podcast that explores African women career journeys. Ore has been recognized as OK Africa 100 Women for 2020, one of the 5 women who defined the Nigeria tech space in 2019 by the TechNext NG, and her Network Technology Women of the Year 2018 award, and as one of the leading ladies Africa in 2018 100 most inspiring women in Nigeria. She's 2014 Vital Voices Lead Fellow. She's 2013 Asoka Fellow and a recipient of Anita Borg Change Agent Award. And she was recognized with a 2014 Chosen Youth Leadership Award from La Roche Foundation. Did I get how to spell that right? And was one of the Why Nigeria top 100 young women in technology in 2014 and 2016. So, Ore, good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Bumi. It's good to be
How are
here.
you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Fine, thank
So, do you know
you.
what? Yeah, I've kind of explained your bio, but can you tell us a bit about yourself now? Who is Ore? Like, who are you?
Okay, I think that's always a hard question to answer, because whenever people ask you, you want to first of all start by what you do, like your career. But of course, your career doesn't define who you are. So I would say I'm a woman who is passionate about people being all they can be. And I'm especially passionate about girls and young women and women in general living their optimal lives. I'm a mother to 2 young children. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter, obviously. I love to read and travel and learn about people. And I think, learning about people and empowering people is central to all the things that I do across WTech, Pataba Books, and then all the other, things that I do outside of work. So I think that's a brief bit about me. You introduced me as Oreoluwa Shomolu, so I'm now Leshi.
Oh, did I say Shomolu? You know, I was telling you that I'm going to make that mistake.
No, most people who have known me since, still call me Shomolu. I'm like, yeah, I get it's all good.
Yes, yes. And I was telling myself that don't make that mistake here, call her Leshi. So apologies, honestly, I really apologize. So a backstory for you guys. I've known Ore for over 16, 17 years, and she's been a very good friend. So when I started out my career, I volunteered in an organization for a year and a half or something in that line. And so from there, we've just built friendships. She's one of the people that she's very approachable. Ore is very approachable, and she has always been my sounding board when it comes to my career advancement. Her doors are open for me, and right now, I'm among the members of her board in our organization, in our NGO.
Yes.
And so this is somebody that I am quite aware of who she is. And let me just make you guys laugh. Ore's voice is like this all year round. She hasn't changed the way she speaks, very soft spoken and smiles. Her smile and her voice. And let me tell you something there, guys, also. So Ore is one that taught me how to smile for pictures. Every time you're meant to smile for pictures, she always has a ready smile for pictures. Remember one time I asked you, how do you do that? She just smile, So that's something about her personality too that I really do appreciate. So let's just dive into it. So please, if you have questions to ask, can you just drop your questions in the chat board? I will give time for us to ask questions. Welcome, everyone. We've started. I did the welcome in before, but I saw that a lot of people are just joining. Welcome, everyone. So this is a bi-monthly webinar. As you, most of you know, I know a lot of people that I know here are my colleagues in the NGO space, and some people that know me while I'm doing what I'm doing now. But the reason behind the bi-monthly webinar is to bring people that I know have the skills that makes them successful in their career. And the skills I'm talking about is the emotional and psychological skills, these soft skills that they usually do not teach us in school, and they don't teach you anywhere else, but they are skills that you need, to succeed. And I spoke about the fact that the reason why, today we're talking about clarity, paradigms, clarity, and all that. So I brought Ore in because of the consistency in what she's been doing, and in a field that a lot of women are not there, in a field that Africans don't really embrace that field, and in a field that is not money driven, this NGO. And she has been consistent for the past 16 years. So that's why I brought her to find out. Let's glean from her and get to know what exactly is everything running about. So, all right, so yeah, let's go into it. When I said clarity, what do you think is clarity? What do you have in mind? What's clarity to you?
Well, to me, clarity is about being sure, certain about who you are and where you're headed. What is it that you want to do with your life? There's a poem that starts with something like, what is it that you intend to do with this one beautiful life? And basically, that's it. We don't have all the time in the world. I think, like I said to you in our pre-chats, life is short. And even if you live to be 100, it still goes by very quickly. I can't count the number of elderly people I've spoken to who have said that they just can't believe how quickly life just flew, how it just went by, that they can remember, like an 80-something-year-old woman is telling me that she can remember being 4 like it was yesterday, that the years just went by. And when you hear things like that, you're like, wow, it doesn't really sink in, maybe until maybe certain things happen in your life and it really sinks in. So for me, I never wanted to live a life where I was just kind of just frittering my time away. I always wanted to live a life that had some purpose and some meaning beyond me. And this is even from when I was young. I don't know why, but I've always had that desire. I never wanted to do a job just because of money. I've always wanted to do something that I would enjoy, but that would have some kind of meaning beyond me and feeding myself and my family. So I think that's what clarity means to me.
Yeah. I'm just going to keep that and then talk about what you just said. So I want to ask you a question. Now, I wrote about your biography, and it's quite amazing. You've done, when I was reading, I was like, this, I should be farmsing with Ore very well. You know what farmsing means? Because it's such a beautiful biography and you've done so many things. There are some times that you have people around you and then you can't accumulate, what they've done. So I want to ask you, did you know your life was going to turn like this 16 years ago when you started out, and looking at yourself now, 2024, did you know this was what was going to happen to you?
Well, no, I would say maybe a bit of yes and no. So, like I said, I never wanted to live a life where I was just drifting along and just doing a job because of money. I always wanted to do something with purpose. What that purpose was, I didn't know. I was not clear about that at all. But by the time I started WTech in 2008, I don't think there's any way I would have had any idea how WTech would turn out, how my life would turn out. I just knew that this is something that I wanted to do. I'd seen the gap in the area. I'd seen that women were underrepresented in technology. And then as I went along, I saw that, women were equally underrepresented in the other STEM disciplines. And I was curious and I wanted to do something about it. But then I think that was just it. I could not have imagined that, WTech would still be around. Of course, I would have said, yes, I want WTech to be around for many, many years outlive me, but you really don't know how things are going to turn out. You just take a step. And so that's what I did. So I had started volunteering, and I basically learned about the underrepresentation of women and girls when I was doing my master's program. And then I started volunteering in community centers. I started offering to teach people, oh, do you know how to use a computer? You know, that's very eager, eager beaver. And I was always in the computer lab. Then I started teaching people, and I started seeing that, especially when I was volunteering in community centers, I would meet some of the people who I taught months later, and they'll tell me how they got a job. So I was like, oh, okay. So there's something to this, you know. So for me, it was just that desire to just that desire to make a change in other people's lives. But in terms of what I would do, like career-wise, before I started WTech, I don't think I was so clear. But I had a feeling, a sense that I would work in a non-profit organization. So one thing that I actually did, so after I finished my undergrad degree was economics. I studied economics, and then by that time I had discovered computers. And I was like, oh, if I could have gone back, I could have studied computer science. But it's fine. I can do a master's in something tech related. And so that's what I did. I did a master's in information systems. And then I started volunteering along the way and just kind of feeling my way around. But by the time I finished my master's, my initial plan was just to get a job in tech, and so I was applying for that. But at the same time, my mother gave me a book called What Color is Your Parachute? I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
And so what color is your parachute? Basically, it basically guides you on how the kind of work that you should do. So there are lots of quizzes. It's very interactive. There are like sections where you have to answer questions. And by the end of the book, it sort of guides you into the career fields for you. Because I was at that point quite confused. I had a lot of interest, and I felt that I was good at many things. And so I was like, which one is it that I want to do? And I felt that I had to pick one thing for the rest of my life. And that's what I was going to do, because that was the model I saw. My dad was an engineer, and he'd been an engineer all his career. My mom was an engineer. She had also been an engineer, all her career, though they had businesses on the side, but it always was like an on the side thing. So I felt that I had to pick a career, and that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So when I went through that book, What Color is Your Parachute? It basically guided me towards jobs that would help people, help develop people, where I could be creative, I could write. Of course, it didn't say exactly what kind of job, but it just said, look out for jobs in this area and have these elements to it. And so I thought, oh, maybe like a nonprofit, maybe a development organization. Of course, I was thinking of the World Bank, the UN, as most people do. And I did apply for those jobs, but they're very competitive. So as I applied for them, I also applied for jobs in other nonprofits. And I'll say reading that book actually really helped, because it gave me an idea of the areas that were a good match for me and the areas that were not a good match for me. So that really helped me sort of start to feel my way along what might be a good area of work for me. So yeah, so I started working in a nonprofit, which also had to do with gender and technology. So two things that I was very passionate about. And I think once I started working there, then I started to learn more about my strengths and start to figure out, okay, I think I want to do something like this for at least for a big part of my career.
Okay. So, there are two things that you mentioned, and I think you've been mentioning it over time, is the fact that you were aware very early of what you wanted and what your dreams were. And then the second thing that I liked that you mentioned is about books. There was a time I did a YouTube video and social media post about one of the ways we can heal is by reading. Reading is a beautiful way to read, because what reading does, it expands your mind. So sometimes one of the ways to gain clarity is by diving into another person's mind. You could say, oh, I will talk to somebody. But when you talk to somebody, the person gives you a limited information about who they are. But when you read their book, they've done a lot of research, they've done a lot of editing, and it's more direct. So you can open up and read a lot about people. So there's that thing that you said, you kept on saying it over and over again. So now this was you working. So what about WTech? So WTech is your own business. So what made you think that now it's time for me already to start doing my own thing? And why Nigeria? Because I know most of the things you did wasn't in the country, but so why did you come back to Nigeria? Why is it that you wanted to do it here? And why did you want to start your own company? I'm asking about what were you thinking? What was the mindset that you had while you were going through that journey?
Okay, so when I was working in nonprofits, I was working and living in the United States. So I was doing that, and all that volunteering experience was also in the United States. So I was doing that, and then I was enjoying my job and I loved volunteering. But I realized that my volunteering, I really enjoyed, and I wanted to do more of that and have that be more present and featured in my job. At the same time, I was starting to get a bit restless in my job. When I had started, it was a big challenge for me. But then, of course, as you go on, you become better and you master the challenges, and then you are looking for the next set of challenges. So I was at that point, and so I was thinking, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay here? Do I want to, because it was a good job, I enjoyed it. And yeah, so but I was just restless, and I just could see that in a few years' time, I was already getting a bit bored, truth be told. So I started thinking about looking for another job. And so I started the process of looking for another job. But then I knew that I wanted to return home. I had always known when I left Nigeria to go to university. I went to university in England. So that's where I did my undergrad and my master's. And then I moved to the US. I had always known that I wanted to return to Nigeria. So even at that point when my colleagues, my classmates were all looking for ways to stay, I just always knew that I was going to end up in Nigeria one way or the other. I didn't know like how many years I would live abroad, but I just knew that. So sometimes you just have that certainty about certain things inside you, so I knew that. So I started also considering Nigeria. But I think the major thing that made me want to come back was that because of my area of interest, which was the gender gap in STEM, I felt that the need was greater in Nigeria. It was greater in the African continent. Yes, that gender gap is also there in the US, in Europe. They talk about it all the time too. Oh, we don't have enough women working in tech, in STEM. But I felt that, at least they have infrastructure, they have a lot of programs in place that, they already have data that can tell you this percentage of women are studying computer science in, let's say, in 1976. And now in 2005, this percentage of women are studying computer science. So you can see the change. I was not finding that kind of data in Nigeria. So I didn't know the extent of the gap in Nigeria, but I had a sense that it was there, because even just from my own observations of my own friends or family or network who are studying and working in STEM, I had an idea that that gap also existed, but the data wasn't there. And I just felt that there was just more opportunity in Nigeria. When you are living abroad, it's a fantastic system and everything is comfortable. Life is great. If you're a young person, you can have your own flat, your own car, and, you can really sort of be in charge of your life. But then if there are certain things you want to do, like really make an impact or a change, sometimes you need to go to where the opportunities are. And in Nigeria, we have a lot of challenges. Those challenges are opportunities. So you look at it from the flip side. And I just thought that this work I want to do, encouraging and supporting more girls and women into STEM is going to be more needed in Nigeria. It's going to have more of an impact in Nigeria. So that's really why I came back. So I came back and I lost the track of the question. Okay, why WTech? Why did I start WTech at the time I
But
did?
before you go, or before you go in, I wanted to just, because as we were talking, I was highlighting some major, things. What happens to us is that when we are going through our journey, we kind of don't know that there are some life skills that we have and some behaviors that we have developed. And so I'm just wanting to list some of the things you said. so re-echo, and then we go into talk about that question. So the one major thing that you said is that you were very aware. So one of the things about what clarity is that clarity is that you are very aware of your situation, good or bad. You are aware of where you are at. And when I do counseling with a lot of people, there are some people that cannot adequately assess their situation, where they are at any point in time T. And so that gives that gives them some form of it doesn't allow them to make decisions. It doesn't allow them make decisions. So that's one thing I've come to understand about that. So you also said that you found a niche and a problem, right? So the first thing you did was you noticed, which is the first thing, is that you were bored, right? And one thing about our emotions is that our emotions are pointers. They direct you, they explain some things to you. A lot of times we think we can ask ourselves questions, but you can observe yourself and find out what is going on with you. Because you could have ignored your boredom and pushed it through, but your boredom was a major pointer. It was an information to you, your restlessness. Some people will just be frustrated where they are, and that is telling them, do something about your situation. So you're being bored where you were at, and also finding that there's more to this thing. Your clarity of the location that you are in, meaning that if I want to do something in America, the impact, the measurements of my impact will not be so much, because if I go back to Nigeria, there are more problems, and where more problems are, I always say that anywhere there's a dark place, if you come with just a little light, your light shines brighter, because the place is dark anyway. So the little thing you did, and so that's what you did, coming back and then finding a problem and identifying it, and then realizing that because there are so many problems means there's so many opportunities, right? Because there are sometimes you can look at all the problems we have, and the problems can drown you, and then you can't look at opportunities. And those were the things you said. And you also mentioned the fact that you realize that coming down here, it could magnify your impact. It could magnify, so many other things, because it's just the lens at which we look at things. And I'm trying to point out the various lens that you did, that you were not so sure that. And so if you're going to write a book, let me just give an advice, and you just list all these things and point it out. These are success skills, that we kind of do not talk about, or we are not aware about, but these are real skills that move us from point A to point B. So you can go on with what you wanted to say about, so why WTech? How did you get to, I know you wanted to start Impact, but NGO, you could have as well done business and still use your business to help somebody else. Why NGO?
Okay, so when I moved back, I was working in an oil and gas consulting firm, and I was working as a training consultant. And then we used to recruit for oil and gas companies, and the owner of the company, my boss at the time, had mentioned that she was constantly frustrated that oil and gas is our major income earning industry in the country, but yet a lot of the money was going outside of the country. And Nigerians should be taking prime positions, in this industry. But when we were recruiting anyway for positions, the people who would come would be so ill prepared, so ignorant about the position, about how to present themselves, for an interview. So she felt that we should do something about it, because she said, oh, it's just giving all these companies an excuse to take the jobs outside and hire expatriates. So let's do something. Let's organize like a workshop, for young people, for undergraduates, so that they can know what the job opportunities are and prepare for them. And so she put me in charge of that. So we called it Vision 2020. because this was before 2020. And so we basically, so my job was really to organize a workshop for undergraduates and also like SS students, so like SS1, SS2, SS3 students, to make them aware of the career opportunities in oil and gas, and just so they can start to think and prepare ahead. And so the first one we did, there was no template, obviously, because it was just like, oh, okay, my boss's idea. And then I now had to like bring it to reality. But I really enjoyed the process. It was fraught with a lot of uncertainty. I had no blueprints to follow, but at the same time, it meant that, I could do anything. And then I had my team to work with. And so we started figuring out, what are we going to do? How are we going to go about this? Let's make a plan. Okay, venues, who are we going to invite to speak, to do this? And I mean, and we pulled it off. It was a fantastic success. We had it at the Museum Center. It was really amazing. And the feedback from the teachers, the parents, even the people who came to speak was just incredible. And it just reminded me that, yes, I wanted to do something similar for girls and women in tech. And let me not lose that. So I started volunteering on the side. I was volunteering as a mentor for young women who were thinking about technology or who wanted to learn certain technologies. I was doing most of it online because the opportunities were based in the US. And I was doing it for young women who did not live in Nigeria. So I was doing that. And then at the same time, I had a very active blog at the time called Ores Notes. And so one day I was talking about, my latest volunteering opportunity and said, oh, I wish there was something like this for Nigerian girls. That does anybody know if there, any like tech mentoring opportunities for young Nigerian girls? You'd let me know. I'd love to be a part of it. And then someone posted that, well, I don't know of any, but all right, if you decide to start one, I'll be happy to support you. And that was the first time it clicked. Yes, maybe like a few years earlier, I had thought about setting up something, but then it was one of those thoughts, it came and then it went, and I was focused on my life. And so it's usually like that, you think about, I wish someone would do this thing. I wish someone would do this thing. And then, the lady who commented was, sort of throwing it back at me that, well, if you decide to start one, I'm like, that's true. Maybe I can start something. And so that's how really WTech was born. I decided I was going to set up my own mentorship program for girls in secondary school. And so I started doing that. I identified some girls in a school, and I used to go there. I was doing my NYSC at the time. So on my CD days, which was Friday, I would go to the school and I would teach them. I wanted to teach them how to blog, but then I realized that they couldn't really use the computer. So I first of all had to teach them how to use the computer. And then I realized that the school, they had a lovely computer lab, but it was always locked. So why is this computer lab always locked? So now I had to make it available. It was a whole lot of things anyway. And then, so the girls were very tentative, just pressing, tap one key on the keyboard, and like, have I broken something? No, 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 just press. No, it's not going to break now. Just press, press, press. And then they grew in confidence from week to week. And eventually we were able to create their blogs. They're able to set up their blogs, post their first make their first blog post, and they were so excited. And it just showed me the power of, well, technology and knowledge about technology on one hand, but just how it can impact your confidence. Knowing how to navigate in a digital world, is so important. Less so then, because social media was really in its infancy in Nigeria, and people were not, we didn't have this online world like we do now. But I just had a sense that, in the years to come, it would be important. And so it was. They really grew in confidence. And it wasn't just like, oh, I know how to use a computer. It just added something to them. You just saw them, I saw them carrying themselves, differently. And even the computer teacher was looking at them differently and also looking at the computers like, these computers that we've just been looking up, we can do more with it. So from there, I got the confidence to apply for a grant. I was on different mailing lists around tech for dev, that's technology for development and all that. And I saw a call for applications and I applied. I was really nervous when I applied because I never applied for a grant on my own. I had when I worked in a nonprofit, but I mean, I did not write the whole proposal myself. I just wrote one section. So everyone in my team would all write different sections. And of course, the project coordinator would do most of the work, and they just say, okay, all right, just write this paragraph. So to have to write the proposal from start to finish, I was a bit nervous. I was like, okay, let me just try. And I did it. And to my utter shock, I was shortlisted as one of the, I don't know how many applicants, and all the applicants were invited to Uganda for a workshop where we would go over our proposals and refine them and everything. And so when I started looking through the profiles of the other finalists, I became so nervous. I almost like canceled because I saw people from big institutions, across Africa, and I was an individual. I was not even registered. I was not a company or an institution. I was me, and I was just like, how can I go among these people? And their proposals just sounded so complex and so this and that. But I talked to myself and said, but you are shortlisted. They said how many people applied or how many applications they received, and they have shortlisted this number, and you made it. So you must have made it for a reason. So I had to do a lot of self-talk, talk to myself. You deserve to be there. Just go there, carry your head high. I really talked to myself because I really wanted to just tell them I wasn't coming. But once I did that, that was the turning point, because I got there and met the others. Everybody else, I think I was the only individual. Everybody else belonged to a big name organization. And, after pumping myself up, I went in there, I was participating, talking, asking questions, contributing with the knowledge that I had. And based on that, we all went home and we were asked to refine our proposals and resubmit, which I did. And I was one of the people selected for the grants. And when I was speaking with a friend who was on the well, not on the judging committee, but he knew, he had some information about the behind the scenes. He said my proposal was actually the best proposal they received. And I was like, wow. So I think that really gave me a lot of confidence, and it made me realize that a lot of times we kind of talk ourselves out of opportunities. We cut ourselves off from opportunities. Before we even get there, we're already telling ourselves that we can't do it. We can't do it. In fact, don't even bother because you can't even do it. Look at the people there. Look at you. You can't stand a chance, So we're already doing that. So I realized that it's important to make sure that, you talk to yourself kindly. You are always encouraging yourself. Nobody else can encourage you the way you can encourage yourself. So I realized that it's so important, that I did that, because if I didn't do that, it would have been the same me, the same proposal, but I'd have gone in with a different kind of energy. So that was a big turning point for me. But that's essentially what led to WTech, because once I got the grant, I could not run the project with my job that I had at the time. And so I decided that, you know what, I've always wanted to do this thing. Now is the time for me. And so I resigned, and then I started the registration process for WTech. So that's how WTech came into the world.
Thank you so much for sharing. There are just like 3 or 4 things I want to highlight there. So one major thing, because I was going to ask a question, but thank God you've spoken about it, so I'll just talk through it. Because the question I wanted to ask is that what were the resources you had, and what were the skills you had that made you think, you should start WTech? But listening to your story, I realized that and I'm going to ask a follow-up question after that, but you realize that you had it already. So my question is, a lot of people have what you have, but also think they don't have it. So what is it about you? Probably you can go to your upbringing and how you were raised that always make you step forward to do things, right? Because usually what made you start was you stepped forward, and stepping forward is a skill that a lot of people can down talk themselves, and then look at the glass half empty rather than half full. So what is it about you? Is it something about your upbringing? Is it something, what is it about you that always made you step out, to do something, even when you were not called? Because nobody kind of called you. Someone just said something in passing. You can as well left it. Do you get? So what was it about you? Do you, yeah.
Okay, so I think there's always nature and there's nurture. I think that I'm essentially a very optimistic person, and I think I have this, I like to think of it as a bounceability. It's kind of like
Yeah.
resilience, you
Yes.
knock me down, I'll bounce back up. I like that bounceability.
I know
So you
that.
knock me down, I come back up, and so I think inherently I have that in me. But then I think also the way I was raised as well. I'm a firstborn, and I think as any firstborn knows, you are called to do many things that you don't always feel prepared for, but you have to do anyway. So you have that part of you that has this, whether it's a can-do spirit or let me just do it, So you do it, you just do it. And then also, I think also my parents as well, they raised us to believe that we could do anything. They never said there was anything that we couldn't do. In fact, when I was in school, I did not like maths in primary school. And my parents would be like, no, what do you mean? What do you mean? You are a daughter of two engineers who used to clear prizes. You know how your parents, everyone's parents always say, I came first. I came first. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, all their prizes were in the house. So I could see that, oh, they really did come first because the prizes were there. So
Mhm.
that, okay. So yeah, so daughter of two engineers. No, 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 no. You are good in maths. You just don't realize this. So they just had this belief in me and my siblings that we could do and be anything that we wanted to. And they just said it wasn't like they were trying to convince us. They just said this in a matter of fact. What do you mean? You can't do it now. You can't do it. So I think that, that's how I was raised. So I was raised, and then I saw it modeled as well. My parents,
Okay.
there was nothing that you would ever put before them that would stump them like, I don't know how to do this one. No. My mom is very resourceful, very ingenious. I would go to her with a problem that I thought was unsolvable. She would ask questions, she would break it down. I said, but have you thought about it like this? I'm like, oh, that's true. So I saw it modeled. I saw my parents, tackle complex problems, and they just always found a way. So I think, with that, and also my own inherent optimism, I think that, I just would always find a way around things. Yes, sometimes things get me down. Things can really get me down. Like, I'm like, but how didn't I see that coming? Why did that happen? And sometimes you take on failures when something doesn't work out. You may not just look at it as a failure. You may look at it like, oh, I failed, But I don't let those things like keep me down for long. After a while, whether that's a few days, sometimes a few weeks, I start to like come back. I reflect on it. I think about it. It helps, to journal. I journal a bit less these days, but from the age of like 11, I kept a daily journal and I would write. And I think for me, the process of writing really helps because I was very reserved growing up. I had a very rich interior life. I'll be thinking things in my head. I had this amazing life in my head that when you looked at me, you wouldn't be able to tell that all these things are in my head. But I wrote a lot, and I think the process of writing also helped me to process what I was feeling. It helped me make sense of the world around me. So I think those were kind of things that helped me just always sort of stay focused and able to, stay on the path despite all the challenges that have come.
Yeah. You just really just did a counseling session for all of us here. So one thing that I also wanted to ask is, so all the skills that you have and all the skills that you were able to acquire, was that the skills that you also needed to run a business now? So you've started WTech, you are running a business, and I know the NGO space is quite taxful because you have to be resourceful all the time and innovative. And there's something I also wanted to, mention here is that because of I have the privilege to I'm always in your NGO kind of looking at you. There's something I always observe is your integrity and how transparent you are in the figures you have. You know, you don't hide your figures. Your figures are always very clear. So what were those, did you have to develop another version of Ore doing a business in Nigeria? Or was it just those skills that you had that, you know, you just kind of fine-tuned or drop? You know, so let's talk about building a business and a thriving business in Nigeria for 16 years, and a business that we also know that a lot of Nigerians are not philanthropic in nature. So how were you able to now run, sorry guys, but you know, philanthropy in Nigeria. So run us through you already building a business now. What skills? Yeah.
Okay. So I think a lot of the skills that I had growing up helped, you know, from being a first child, from being optimistic, from being resourceful and being a problem solver, creative. All those skills have helped. When I first moved to Nigeria and I started working in the oil and gas consultancy, as I mentioned, I was not a boss, but I mean, I guess because of my position, a lot of the other staff came to me because they saw me as, oh, kind of like next supervisor. So they could come to me with problems without having to go to the founder of the company, the principal consultant. So it also put me in a leadership position there, and I had to kind of learn how to figure things out. And then it was a good introduction to how business is in Nigeria. Working in the US, everything is very, you know, by the book. This is how we do it. There are some lines that you don't cross, you know, boundaries are very clear. Here, boundaries were not so clear. People will come to me to tell me that, please, oh, warn that lady, oh, she did this. And I'm like, how is that my job? How does that concern me? You know, because I was coming from the US where your job is your job. You know what your function is. But here I was, you know, sometimes having to settle fights and things like that. And then learning about when you come in, you know, you greet everyone in the office. In America, they're a bit more, you know, they may not even say good morning to you, and just say hi, you know, if they feel like it, you know. I mean, of course, as a Nigerian, I wasn't brought up that way, but then you do get this. I did come back with a very formal, you know, proper attitude. And so I think working, serving, first of all, really helped like bring me back into how things
Was the
are.
serving your NYC serving?
Yes, that was
Okay.
my NYSC, exactly. So that
So
really
for
helped.
those in Nigeria, for those that are not Nigerians, NYC is the National Youth Service Corps. Is something that you have to do right after university to integrate yourself into understanding Nigerian culture and getting better. Yeah. So please go on.
Yeah. So the skills that or the experiences that I had, you know, during my NYSC, I think also really helped to like refresh my memory about how, you know, business is done in Nigeria. So by the time I started WTech, I had, you know, I was using those skills basically, and, you know, that's knowledge and experience. But then I was largely also running WTech based on my experiences abroad, working in a nonprofit and a lot of common sense, I would say. So by common sense, I would say just like having a sense of how things should be. And then my experience working in a nonprofit as well. But then working in a nonprofit is very different from running one. And I quickly found this, you know, at the time when I started, I had two other members of staff. I had Toyin, who you know very well, who was our project coordinator, and then Inkechi, who was our office assistant. And they would come to me for this, that, and, you know, questions that I really didn't have the answers to, but I realized that, oh, I'm the boss. So I have to have some kind of answer. So I'd have to figure it out. So those early years were just with me, just really figuring things out, learning how to get answers where there were no answers, trying to just piece things together. Our first week, we got a visit from LIRS. LIRS is the Lagos Internal Revenue Service. That's our tax officials in here in Lagos State asking for our tax receipts. And we're like, just Number one, we are a non-profit. We are not meant to pay taxes. Number two, you can see that we are just starting. We are just, opening our boxes and everything. We are just literally setting up the office. They say, okay, congratulations, you are a non-profit, but you do have to pay tax. So they now started schooling us on that and all that and all that. So, I was just learning. But then I got to a point where I feel that I had plateaued. I had hit the top of my knowledge. Is it top of my
So
knowledge or
how did
bottom?
you know you've arrived at that point?
Because I now had problems that I didn't know how to solve. So
Okay.
initially we were of course looking for fundraising constantly. We started in 2008 and there was a global recession in 2008. So all the funds that I thought that we would get, we didn't get. I had gotten the first grants that I ever applied for, and that was in 2007. And I just assumed that it would always be that easy because I love to write. And I thought, oh, I can put together very good proposals. And so I think that was just, God really wanted me to be in this space and really encouraged me in. But then once I got in here and then no funding at all, we would write proposals. We would get no's, or we wouldn't even hear anything back. That was usually the worst, when you don't even hear anything back at all. And then it was really difficult. But we just kind of pushed through. The first grants we got, we kind of just stretched it. So I really learned how to be frugal and maximize, whatever resources I have, because that was the situation that we were born into, literally. But then we got to a point where I needed to hire more people in order for us to do more work, because we had piloted programs and we could now see that, okay, we have some evidence that this is successful, but we need to scale it up. We need to do it bigger. We need more people. We can't manage with the team we have. We need more resources. How do we get these resources? And I just did not know how to go about that. There were things like, in terms of processes and structures, I've always been an organized person. So naturally, I try to organize every space that I'm in. And I also organized, WTech. But then there were just things that I did not know how to do. And especially the more projects you have, things become more complicated. It's easier to manage things when you have just one project, or you have two projects. One is in April, the other one is in September or August. You have a lot of space. But by the time you're having multiple projects are overlapping, then the team you have is no longer enough. You need more money. Funders are asking you for questions that you can't answer. They're asking for resources that you don't have. And I was just like, I need help. I need some kind of help. I don't know what I need, but I know that I need help and I cannot do this anymore. This was about our fifth year in business. This was about 2013. It was just a generally tough period. I had lost my sister in 2012. So I was just in a place where I was mourning, and I was also exhausted, because, so you mentioned Pataba Books, which my parents started Pataba Books when I was in secondary school and had run it, sort of. And at a point where they were retiring from their main jobs and they just thought, we don't have the energy for this. So they were going to shut down the bookshop. So my sister and I said, this bookshop, like, we are going to take it over and run it. And so we started doing that. So she was my business partner, in Pataba Books. And then, so when she passed away, I now found that, oh, I have to run these two organizations, by myself. I'm in a meeting. Stop. I now had to run these two organizations by myself. I was just constantly tired. So from 2012 into 2013, I was tired all the time. And I was now starting to experience challenges in WTech that I didn't have the knowledge, to deal with. And so I felt that something had to change. So that something was basically acquiring more knowledge.
So can I ask you a question? Or can I ask you a question where you're going? Why didn't you give up? Why didn't you think that WTech, I think I should give up? Why was it that you thought this is the time to get more knowledge? Because it could just be like, oh my God, I'm not good at this. Let me just give up. So why was it that you didn't give up, but rather you went up? What do you
Mm,
think happened?
I
And I'm
think
asking some
that
questions.
I just didn't consider, it wasn't even an option for me. I didn't even consider it.
Do you
It's
give up
like when
easily?
people say, oh, I don't think so, but I think that if I see that this is a no-win situation and nothing good is going to come out of this, then yes, I'm prepared to let things go. So it's not that I will hold on at any cost. You have to recognize the situation and see it for what it is. But for WTech, it just never occurred to me to shut it down because I felt that we've had some positive impacts, and there's still so many things ahead that we want to do. So it never even occurred to me at that point, that, oh, no, 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 it didn't. I was just thinking, what can change? What can change? Yeah. Mm.
Okay. So
So,
please go on. I
yes.
wanted to hear. So you pivoted, you asked for help. How did you
So,
know you needed help? You said that. So
mhm,
how did you
mhm.
go to look for help?
So I saw a call for applications by the Enterprise Development Center, EDC. They're a center in the Pan-Atlantic University. It was called Pan-African University at the time. So they had this program called the Social Sector Management Program. That was a 6-month course for social entrepreneurs. And I had seen their call for application maybe like 2 years earlier. And when I saw that was 6 months, I was like, 6 months? Who has time for that? I'm too busy for that. So I had ignored it. But by the time I saw it again in 2013, I just knew that this is what I need. Like I just had the belief that this will help me move past this point that we are, that I'm just going to have to make the time. Yeah, so I applied and thankfully I got in because it's very, very competitive, even just to get in. So I applied, I got in, and yeah, it was very intense. For 6 months, you are participating in classes. So the way that they do it, for anyone who is not familiar with how EDC works, is that for one whole week, you attend classes. And back then, you would actually attend physical classes. I don't know how it is now. So for 1 week, we were at the EDC office, which was in VI at the time, for classes. And then the remaining 3 weeks in the month, you are meant to be implementing all the things that you learned. Then the next month, you go in for your 1 week, and then you implement for 3 weeks. And so that's how it was. There was homework, lots of things. But I just found from day one that, wow, I was just getting the information, clarifying your mission, your vision statements. WTech already had the mission and vision statements. I realized some of the other organizations didn't have that, or theirs was not a real mission and vision statement. So we had that. But then there are lots of other things to think about: how you recruit, how you monitor and evaluate, how you assess your work, how you build your team, how you motivate your team. There was just so much ethics, finances, taxes. I mean, it really covered everything, and it really gave me a good grounding. And I think because of the model of going in for 1 week, implementing for 3 weeks, and one thing that the Professor Peter Bankole had mentioned the first day is that you are going to encounter a lot of information. Don't try and do everything. Also, you have to do everything. Even if it's just one thing you pick and say, this one thing, I'm going to work on it, just do that. And so that's really, really helped. I would identify, okay, what's the key thing we need to work on this month? Oh yeah, let's do this. And I think with that, gradually it started helping. And then I was now sharing this knowledge with my team, and things just got easier, I would say. Not easy, because running a non-profit or social enterprise in Nigeria, I think anywhere in the world, is not easy. You are also held to very high standards, even though sometimes when you read the news, people feel like, oh, NGOs, you get away with everything. But I don't think so anyway. I think, in order to get funding, in order to keep getting funding, you have to keep showing and demonstrating your credibility and your integrity. It's a lot of work. I think, businesses have it easier. In terms of fundraising, you are raising money for something that is not always a tangible product. For businesses, you can say, oh, I'm selling this phone. This is the phone. You can see this is how much I'm charging. But for, most social enterprises, you are changing lives. you cannot always show that to people when when you're trying to raise funding. Maybe if you have done something and you have a track record, you can say, oh, these are, our beneficiaries, but it still feels very, ephemeral. So yeah, so it's not easy, but at least I think after the SSM course, it got easier. Then we formed a network of all the people who participated in the program, and we were finding ways to support each other. And I realized that, oh, I just have to keep learning. Learning doesn't stop. So I have to just get myself grounded in the social entrepreneurship space and keep learning. Then at the same time, that same 2013, when I was doing the SSM course, was when I was elected as an Ashoka Fellow. And so I think for me, that also gave me a huge boost. So for anyone who doesn't know, Ashoka is an organization that promotes and advocates for social entrepreneurs. And social entrepreneurs are people who are solving a problem that has social repercussions, basically. And you can be a nonprofit or you can be a business, but a business with a social mission. So there's always a popular example of Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes is this business, I think it's an American company. They sell shoes essentially, but they also want to make sure that children who cannot, oh, our lights just went, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Life in Nigeria. So they wanted to make sure that children who don't have shoes can get shoes. So for every shoe they sell, they donate one shoe. So yeah, so that's a social business. And then of course you have the standard non-profits that everyone is aware of, yeah, basically do the work that we do. So that's how I just started, I think, getting past that wall that I was facing.
Okay. The interesting thing is that, you are saying so many things very casually, but the truth is that these are skills that one thing, we're talking about clarity. One thing I've noticed about all you said is that you are very aware of what you are going through, and then you find ways to deal with what you are going through.
Yeah.
Right. So the awareness of what you are going through. And like you said, you've explained that is from your upbringing, is from your innate characteristics and all that. And then there's a question I want to ask before we go. Please, if you guys have any questions, we are going to be done in the next 5 minutes. Please drop your questions so that we can ask Ore, and I hope you guys are gleaning so many things. So one thing I wanted to ask is that you spoke about Ayola, your sister. So your sister is Ayola. So you spoke about Ayola when she passed, and the interesting thing is that when Ayola passed was a defining moment for me too, honestly. It kind of, changed because it was so sudden, and so that kind of just it took me down. I had to sit down, and have honest conversations with myself. And I know that I pivoted and changed a lot of my things at that time because it was just very sudden. So how was your mental state at that time? Did you go for counseling? Did you do any counseling work? How were you able to deal, with the passing, because she's your only sister and all that? How were you able to deal, with all that and also show up in your career, and your career was going through difficult times? How were you able to do that?
So it definitely was not easy. Grief was something I had not experienced in that way, in that proximity. And literally, I think that one thing that it did for me was that it really made it clear to me that we cannot take life for granted. I literally said bye to her one day. Bye, I'll see you soon. And that was it. And I never saw her again. And it was such a huge shock. And so for me, I realized that, you know what, this life is really short. We all know this in theory that, oh, people say, oh, life is short, life goes by, blah, 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 blah. But then when something like that happens and you lose a loved one, you realize that tomorrow is not guaranteed to anyone. And we have to live this life with intention. We have to be deliberate. And one thing about Ayola was that she was very intentional about her life. She had
Yeah.
a vision statement for her life. You know, she wrote it down. And I was like, vision statement for her life? Are you a business? She said, no, but this is her life, you know? So she wrote it down. So after that, I was like, what is my own vision statement? I know that, yeah, I'm running WTech. So everybody thinks, oh, Aura is very focused and everything. I said, okay, yeah, I'm focused about WTech, but am I focused about my life? So it really also made me think a lot about my own life, the choices I was making, and how I would like to live my life moving forward. And I realized that I wanted to live my life with more joy. I'm someone who's very focused on work. I'm very serious. I'm maybe typical firstborn, very efficacious and all that. And so I'm always working at something. I always have problems I'm thinking about. I don't always embrace the joy because there are so many problems in front of me that I'm just, okay, let me do this. Okay, I've done that one. I tick it off. Okay, the next problem. Okay, let's do it. Tick it off. And that's the kind of person I am. Very, very goal oriented. And I was not really enjoying my life, you know. And people were saying, oh, you're living your passion, you're living your dream. But there's a lot of joy that was not present in my life. And I think her going in that way, and she was a very joyful, bubbly person, you know. I was
Yeah.
like, huh, I need to be more like that. And I think for me, one thing actually, at the time I was single, and of course, being a single woman in your 30s in Nigeria, you get so much pressure to marry. People will just bring any old guy. Eh, this one is okay now. He has two legs, he has two hands. What else do you want? You know? So there was a lot of pressure, you know, but I had a sense of who I wanted to be married to, the type of person anyway, or so I thought. And so I remember one day after Ayola had passed away. So my brother is married. He got married 1 year after WTech started. So
Yeah.
at the point she passed away, he had a young son. The son was a baby. And so they came and they stayed in our parents' house, and we were all there in the house. But at a point, you know, school was starting in a few weeks' time or like 2 weeks. So he now had to go back to his own house and everything. So I remember the day he was leaving with his family, I was just, you know, standing, I waved them, you know, bye and everything. And then I saw, you know, they all went out. So I was just looking at them from the window. Their house help, their nanny went out. Then my sister-in-law went out with their son. And then my brother was the last person to go. And then he was locking the front door as he was going. And I was just like, wow, he has a family, he has a unit. And I was like, what do I have? And the thing is, because my sister and I had been so tight, so we were our own units. I was like, I don't have anybody now. And so I was, in that moment, I was kind of struck with a peculiar kind of loneliness. And I realized that, oh, I actually want to be married. And you know how sometimes it is when you're single, you tell yourself, if marriage happens, and it happens, if it doesn't happen. But I realized in that moment that I really want to be married. I want to have my own family like my brother has his own family. I want to have my own children like my brother has his own, you know? And so with that, that actually made me more intentional about my life in a certain way. I had always been very focused on work. When I came back home, I would continue working. My weekends too, I would go for speaking engagements, work, everything was work. And I realized that, okay, and I had always said that if a guy shows up, I will make space for him. And then someone told me that, but if you don't make the space, how will you even have the time to find the guy? And I just brushed that aside. But I think in that moment, when I was looking at my brother and his family, I realized that it's true. If all I do is work all the time, how will I even have the headspace or even the time to meet somebody? And so I had to be intentional about creating more opportunities in my life, you know, for that to meet someone and just have fun and relax, you know. And so that was a different journey for me. And I realized that once I started to do that, they always say that you find what you are looking for. So
Yeah.
like if you want to buy like a Toyota, all of a sudden you just start seeing Toyotas everywhere. You never saw the Toyotas. They were there, but you just never saw them because your mind was not focused on Toyotas. So I just realized, so when that happened, I now started seeing, maybe meeting guys, and then I'd always met guys before, but maybe never really looked at them in that way. But then I would start looking at them from a different lens, like, oh, okay, could this person be a potential, partner and all that? But I think, but anyway, so my husband is someone who I'd already met many years before, and we were friends. But I think that, Ayola's passing really helped me to be clear. Number one, that I did want to get married. I did want to have children. I wanted to have my own family. And then the kind of person I wanted to be married to. And I had a long list of, all these qualities, outgoing guy, this. But then I think the more guys I met, the more I realized that, oh, actually, you start to realize what you don't want, what you are not, what doesn't work for you. So I think, with time, I started to realize that, oh, my husband, who I had known for so long and did not consider that, oh, to me, he's just a friend. I started realizing that actually a lot of the qualities that I really want, he has. So that was a different kind of clarity for me. And yeah, so I think, so anyway, her passing really shaped my life in so many fundamental ways. Of course, but yeah, but
we have questions in the comment section, and thank you so much. But I wanted to highlight something that you said. I think I can categorically say, hello, darling, how are you? I can categorically say now that, hi, you could put your face here. We've seen you already. Hi, how are you? So, we're talking about clarity and being a behavioral therapist. The truth about issues is that most of the time we always think the grass is greener on the other side, but the truth is that we have everything that we need. We just need to have a life-defining moment to look into ourselves. And then when you look into yourself, you assess what you have and then make the best of what you have. So one thing I want to say today is that if you guys don't, remember anything, one thing about clarity is that you most 100% have everything that you need. You just have not stopped and look at yourself. So you've said your story so many times, and all your story is not anything external. It's being able to assess yourself, change your mindset, and then do something about it. So we have a question in the comments. It was, how did you survive COVID era in business? NGO people that were for profits were closing down. So how were you able to survive COVID? And there was something that I also, know about you is your integrity. You are somebody that has, and because I have been very, very active in your NGO, I've been very active about anything. So how were you able to keep integrity in Nigeria? And then how were you able to survive COVID era in business?
Okay, sorry, it's in my room. Okay, so in terms of integrity, there are some things that are non-negotiable. And so for me, that was non-negotiable. It wasn't an option to falsify figures. I know that a lot of businesses have two books. One book that the actual book, and then one book is one that they file. It was never an option to do that. Growing up, I didn't see that modeled in my life. My parents were always very like straight arrows, and I think, and then when you are a Christian,
did your faith have anything to do with that?
Yeah, when you're a Christian, you do not, that is not an option for you. No matter what the challenges may be with, with presenting the truth, whatever the truth is, that is the path, that's the option that you take. So for me, it was never an option to do anything else. And I realized that it was very important to be a credible organization. like I said, when I started WTech, people say, you NGOs, you're the one with all the money, you're the one chopping all the money, and of course, negative comments like, what do you people even do? Just write beautiful proposals, and then you now see the EG, buy new cars. And that was all I heard when I started WTech, and I was determined that WTech would not be one of those organizations that was like that, seen like that. I wanted us to be an organization that, we lived as our mission. What we said we were going to do, we did. So I think if you decide what you want to do and how you are, before the difficult challenges or before the trials come, you are more likely to stick to it. But if you just say like, oh, we'll see how it goes then, we know how that goes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So how
So
did you survive COVID?
so COVID was, I think for us, it was a bit easier because number one, like I said, we started during an economic recession. So learning how to do a lot with very little was already part of our DNA. We had to do that for so many years. And so even when we would get funding, we would always be very super resourceful with it. You have restricted funding, you have unrestricted funding. Restricted funding, you have to spend it in a particular way. Then you have unrestricted funding, which gives you room to just, use in whatever way you deem fit for the organization. And so we did that. And then one of our longtime funders was very flexible that year. They said that the funding that they gave us, normally it goes to one of our programs called the WTech Academy, which is our after school club. They said, oh, well, they were going to give us the funding, but we didn't have to use it for the academy. We could use it for anything where we wanted. I was like, thank God. So that was good. We had paid our rent for 2 years just before the pandemic hit. So at least rent was covered for 2 years. And then we had our team. We started working from home as everybody did. We just tried to manage costs as best as we could. And yeah, so we just, cut out things that we did not have to do. We trimmed down our programs. So we were basically operating just the essentials. And we're just trying to just use the money that we had well. But yeah, but thankfully, like I said, some of our funders were very, very accommodating, very flexible. And I think that comes from years of also demonstrating your credibility,
Yeah.
submitting your reports on time, making sure that you're always demonstrating your work. You can go to social media and always see our work. You don't have to, try to dig too deeply into like, oh, so are they really doing this work or not? The evidence is there. We paste it everywhere, that we can. So I think, that's really helped us. Yeah.
I also wanted to chip in before I go to the next question. So that means that the way you survived COVID was you already had the skills before COVID. So you had the skills of how to streamline yourself because you were already dealing with some recession. And so when COVID came because you've already had a skill. Imagine just learning how to streamline during COVID. There's a possibility of not surviving. So how you survived COVID was really that you've developed the skills already. And so
Yeah.
COVID came and allowed you to show forth those skills. So the second question is, what was the time frame it took for you to stabilize from when your partner, so her partner didn't pass on, it was her sister. So I hope that's a question that they're asking in terms of the pattern books.
Okay. So for Pasaba books, that was a bit tougher because my major focus had always been WTech. So even when my sister and I were running Pasaba, I still spent more of my time at WTech. And because she was there, I knew that there were certain things that were taken care of. So I could just, focus on other aspects. And I think that was also one of the challenges that we had because she would say, all right, I don't feel you're taking this business as seriously as I am and all that. And I say, hey, but I have another, organization I'm running. So we kind of had to like discuss back and forth and figure out something that would work. for us. And so we ended up dividing the task. Okay, you are in charge of this, and you are in charge of this. So we found areas that sort of complemented our skills, our natural skill sets, and worked on that. So by the time she passed away, I now had to take on all the things that she was doing in addition to WTech. It was very tough. The team at WTech at the time are not like the team now. They were still quite young and not able to make decisions on their own. Like right now, I don't even have to be there and things will just go on. But with WTech, if I wasn't there, urging them, pushing them, asking them questions, things would just be at a standstill. So that was difficult. And then in Pataba, there are just lots of things. My sister had gone to a book fair a few weeks before she passed, had ordered some things, paid for some things, and not paid for some other things, did like part payments. And so I had vendors sending me emails like, okay, is due. So I was just like, okay. So I now had to go into our inbox, start going through all the emails. Okay, what has been paid for? And sometimes life is funny. She was very organized. So she had done, spreadsheets of all the vendors that she had purchased things from. Okay, I paid this one in full. This one we paid 70%, 30% is left. She had done everything, put the payment details, everything. And I remember that the weeks leading up to her passing, she was sitting and she was just working. She would work late into the night. And sometimes when I was going to bed, because I also slept very late, I would ask her, Ayola, you can continue this tomorrow. You can do it. She said, no, I have to finish it. And she was just working. Someone would say like, almost like she knew she was going to go. Obviously she didn't, but she was just working and she just had everything documented. And she really pushed herself to do everything. So that by the time she passed and I went to her, I was going through her files, and then we used to share files on clouds and Dropbox at the time. So I was going through everything. All the information was already laid out there. I didn't have to be digging or asking them to send me invoices because she had organized everything. So number one, it's very important to be organized, and it's important to make sure that you're sharing important documentation with key members of your team. So in case you are not around, for whatever reason, they can carry on. So that was a very important lesson. But yeah, it took me a while because I had WTech, then Pataba, but because all the information was laid out, I was able to, respond to them. Okay, can you please give me 2 weeks and blah, blah, blah. And, and it was, I think, so that was taken care of. But it was just like the day-to-day running, because she used to be there every day. I couldn't be there every day. So I would try and figure out like, okay, I'll do WTech some days, I'll do Pataba some days. I was constantly tired. So I think for one whole year, I was constantly tired. But after 1 year, I'll say I kind of found my feet.
We're about to round up, and I would just like to kind of summarize a lot of the things that, you said. I know Rose hand is up, somebody's hand is up to ask questions. So one thing that I know that I am taking away from here is that there are some character traits that you can't negotiate. So let's talk about Ayola, for instance. She didn't know she was going to pass, obviously, but being doing what she had to do. She's the boss. She can as well say, I don't need to, doing what you have to do and not extending, and then overindulging are skills that you can even pass on into so many areas of your life. And then for you so when somebody asks, how did you survive COVID? The fact is that you were already living a lean life, as if you knew COVID was going to come. So when COVID came, it was easy to transition. And I think that's it. That's one of the issues that, business owners in Nigeria have not been able to, develop, in the fact that when income come in, they want to live quite higher than, the actual money that they are getting. So all the skills of looking back at yourself, the skills of, pushing yourself for that. Because I keep on asking the question, you knew that you could have said you're not doing this anymore, but the fact that you didn't even think about it is quite amazing. And that's also to, kind of talk about these skills, because why I am talking about these skills a lot is that when people come to meet me for counseling and when I'm doing counseling skills for them, the reason why a lot of times we can't move past most of the things we are doing is because of the ability to just sit down and look at yourself. Let's talk about journaling. Journaling is one of a very powerful tool to help you to take things out of your mind, you know, and move on with everything. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Ore. The last person that we want to, Rosie, do you still want to ask your question? Because I think your hand went down, but I knew your hand went up at a point. Do you want to unmute and ask your question? Or anybody else have any question to ask? She's still here. Okay, I think she's gone.
I'm here. Thank you. Good
Okay.
evening. She has shed more light on what I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, Ore. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sharing your life with us. Thank you for talking about Ayola too. I know that's it's interesting. It's not so difficult to talk about it now. Again, you know, you've passed through that phase, but thank you for sharing your life with us and thank you for everything. See you guys in the next 2 months. So this is the last bi-monthly webinar for the year. We're going to start next year for the bi-monthly webinar again. And I hope when I share my invite, you guys come in. Right. Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you so
Bye.
much for having me.
Thank you.